you a couple more of my favourite plants down there that I think most of you looked at. And then if you've got any questions, anything else you want to chew over or explain, then feel free.
Are you doing yellow primrose?
I could show you the yellow primrose. Did you see it?
I don't know why it's a dominant species.
I wouldn't call it dominant. It's. We'll go through a little bit of primrose for sure. Did anyone do the Shio, Casuarina? Some of you were looking for Casuarina. It's really interesting. This guy, because you think it's one of the first trees you come to when you're coming from spinifex, and it can even sometimes often grow in that spinifex zone. And you think, well, how on earth can a tree get into that sort of zone and make a success of it? These are so important, these trees. They're the ones with these needle-like fronds that all hang down. Now, they form a great layer just behind the spinifex. And one of their great roles is they're basically like salt filtration tissue. As the salty air blows in, all of these needle-like fronds are fantastic at trapping the salt out of the air. In fact, on a hot, salty day, at the end of the day, you go up and lick one of these, and you can just taste the amount of salt that's been caked onto it. And one thing they do is at the end of the day, they'll actually secrete fluid out of the leaves to wash the fronds off, to wash the salt off. But let's have a closer look, because these are quite interesting. Now, remember we spoke before, and we said that it's the leaf that water exits from the plant via the stomata, the little openings in the leaf. That's where water comes from. So let's have a look at these, because this long structure here is not actually a leaf. It's a photosynthetic branchlet. Now, let's find out where the leaf is. So what they've basically done is they have reduced the leaf area. See how these are joined? You watch what happens when I pull one of these apart. Okay, let's get a focus on that. Okay, so the true leaves of this plant are these little spikelets here. That's what's left of what's considered to be the true leaf. Okay, so basically what they've done is they've created another part of the plant to do the photosynthesizing, which are the branch ends. These are considered to be branch ends. And so they put the chloroplasts and the chlorophyll into the branch ends to do the photosynthesizing. They reduce the leaves down to these little spikelets in between, and so that reduces water loss. Okay, so a lot of these plants that can grow in really dry times, they'll have tiny little leaves. These guys have shrunken the leaves down to that point there. And then, like I said, at the end of each very hot, salty day, they secrete some fluid out of these leaves. It dribbles down and washes the salt off the photosynthetic branchlet. So they're good with salt, but they've got something else that's really important. Now, this is one of Ted's pictures. Let's try and listen carefully at this one, because it really is a key adaptation. This same adaptation, or the same relationship, happens with the wattle, the beach bean, and the casuarina. It's to do with the relationship with bacteria in the root. So it's not something we can see in the field. But let me try and explain it like this. Down in their roots, there are little clumps, little brown clumps of rhizobium bacteria, which means root bacteria. Rhizo, root, obium bacteria. So these are colonies of bacteria that develop in the root tissue and forms a symbiotic relationship with the plant. Now, the background to this is, you guys probably understand that the two of the most important plant nutrients are phosphates and nitrates. Most plant fertilisers made out of phosphate and nitrate. And in our atmosphere, we've got about 70% nitrogen gas, but we can't use it. We breathe it in and we breathe it out. We don't do anything with it. Down in all the little air spaces of the soil is atmosphere, so there's also nitrogen gas. But the plant can't use it either.
It's useless to the plant in a gas form. So the little bacteria, as part of their metabolism, they convert gaseous nitrogen into a water-soluble nitrate. That's a form the plant can use. So this is amazing because literally out of thin air with this relationship, the plants can generate nitrates important for their growth. So we link this to the very low nutrient sand. You think, well, how's that going to get it? It actually uses the bacteria to help. The bacteria get some advantages by being fed by sugars produced by the plant. So the plant, as it's photosynthesizing, the bacteria get sugars out of the root system, and they help the plant access nitrates. Now, you might have often heard, even in agriculture, they often talk about, have you ever heard of crop rotation? Where in between the main crop, farmers will often plant peas or beans because they are nitrogen fixers. And as the beans grow, they actually put nitrate back into the soil again, so that then the main crop comes along, you've got a nicely fresh supply of nitrates. So that's, like we said, that's a really important relationship with these plants. And like I said, it's not just them. So if you were looking at the beach bean, one of its features, why it grows in the forward dune, nitrogen fixer. It can create nitrates. Same with the wattle, nitrogen fixer. So, like I said, sometimes it's these very important relationships are required for these guys to be able to live out there. Okay. Now I think we've done all of this one. We don't need to stop there. There's the wattle. Like I said, it's also a nitrogen fixer. And the Banksia is another one I might just quickly go over because it's a very abundant tree in that midsection, the Banksia. And you think, well, how does it go? In fact, it's one of Australia's iconic trees. I've got a couple of its leaves here, so let's check this out. So here's the Banksia leaf. Now, one of the first things, you're welcome to come and have a feel of these if you didn't today. One of the first things you notice about it is it's really tough. It feels like a thin, hard bit of plastic. Okay? Now, what that's to do with, inside the leaf is a type of cellulose called hemicellulose, H-E-M-I, hemicellulose. And it basically hardens the leaf, makes it tough, so that when it's low in water, it doesn't shrivel up and wilt. So you know your average plant at home, your garden plant, you don't water them enough, and the leaves all shrivel up and they don't function anymore. So Banksias can grow in very dry places. They basically got extra reinforcing structure in the leaf. It keeps it open and functioning even in low water. It's not going to collapse on itself and shrivel up. Then underneath, we've got this layer. Okay, so you might have noticed that along the coastline, we often find reflective surfaces. So we had our reflective spinifex grass there. On the rocky shore, all those creatures that come out of the water at low tide, barnacles, tube worms, they're a white colour, reflecting heat control. So that's also thought to be another heat control strategy for the Banksia, because they'll often grow in very sandy places where the heat might be reflecting from below and coming up under the tree as well. But it's interesting when you actually tear this stuff and have a look at the side of it. I'll zoom in on that. You can see it's like tissue paper. It's a very fibrous layer. And here we go. It's a bit tricky with the autofocus. But what's embedded in there are the stomata. Remember, the little parts where the water is lost. So what this little layer of fuzz here does is it creates a humidity layer. So still, humid air gets trapped in all of those fibres, and once again, it's a strategy for reducing the amount of water loss out of the plant. These guys are also masters of fire. Okay, so Banksias, of course, they are perfect for all of the Australian conditions. And in fact, their seed pods, these ones don't need a fire. They can release the seeds anyway when it gets very dry. But a lot of Banksias
require a fire to generate enough heat to burst their seed pods open and release the seeds. I've got one down here. This is the Banksia seed pod in the Walker Wasteland, another species. And these guys, of course, love fire. The fire will open that and release the seed. They won't bite. So obviously, guys, why do you think it might be a good idea when a fire comes along to get your seed out there? What do you say? No? Who's got an idea? Right. So basically, a fire will clear the deck and open up more spaces for the young ones to start. What does the fire leave on the ground? What's in the ash? Exactly. So you've got the combination of clearing a bit of space and a fresh layer of nutrients in this low nutrient ecosystem. So Banksias take advantage of that. Okay, so that's some of the reasons that they do well out in the front there. Now, down the very back, let me give you a quick quiz. What do you think is happening to the salt by the time we get down in the rainforest? Did you feel much wind down there? So by that stage, the wind is literally lifted right up above. It can be blowing a gale on the beach. You get down in that rainforest and you virtually feel nothing, but you can see the tops of the trees moving. So those dunes lift the wind up and over. What about light levels? What happened there? Okay, we start to get a closed canopy. We start to get shady species being able to live in the understory. And like we said, hopefully your abiotic factors will really show that those measurements going through. Humidity. Anyone got a summary on what they found the humidity doing? You could feel it, you could use your body. What was it like in that sand dune? You're sweating, it was all still and clammy. So the humidity starts up a bit higher there. But one of the keys, and I don't have it there, I should have it there, is the leaf litter. Did you notice the leaf litter layer increasing as you went through? Okay, so think of that like a layer of mulch. It's holding moisture in, stopping it evaporate out the top as well. We start to get a really rich system. And hopefully you also notice the tree height's increasing. So like I said, the closer you get to the beachfront, trees are getting more stunted, staying out of the salt air, trying to stay in the protected zones. Further back you come, they can stretch up, they've got more nutrients, and they can get up higher. Okay, just to flesh it out one stage further. Did anyone notice any fungal activity? You might have had to look around a bit, but sometimes you'll find little bracket fungi, shelf fungi. It's all through that rainforest soil. We can't forget the fungi, all right? It's probably one of the most exciting areas of research that's being done at the moment in ecology. It's often the little guys, like fungi, the humble little things that we don't even see. We see their fruiting bodies, which are mushrooms and things like that, but fungi itself, the mycelium, is going all through the soil. So it's a decomposer, so it breaks down nutrients, returning those nutrients to be available for the plants. But one fantastic thing they've discovered about a lot of plants, in fact most plants, is fungi actually attach to the roots and they spread out in the soil. So imagine it like this. Let's say that the underneath the soil, the root of the plant covers about that area. Now the fungi attach to the roots and they spread out further in the soil. So they can bring nutrients up from further away than the plant could get to itself with its root tissue. So they're actually helping plants access nutrients, bringing them up into their root systems. Absolutely vital. Did anyone see a termite nest?
No.
No? No? All right, well, there's tons of them down there. These are the tree nesting termites, so you'll see a big black lump in the top of the tree. They build little tunnels that come up the trunk of the tree. So the great role of a termite, of course, we hate them in our homes. but they're the decomposers of wood. So they require a relationship with the bacteria in their intestine to digest what's called lignin, which is the stuff that strengthens and hardens wood. Tough stuff to eat. But once again, they're helping to basically return those nutrients to the forest floor. All right. So just to. Sorry.
The termites and the fungi that you're looking at there. Where are you most likely to find them in terms of the sand dunes?
So in terms of the dunes, you'll start to find, I would say about the mid-dune section going into that rainforest. You'll start to find increasing amounts of termites and fungal activity. So, and the fungi can often relate to the soil moisture. If the soil can hold more moisture, more organic matter, you start to get better fungal activity. Okay, but I'd certainly say you can find termites really anywhere from probably the top of the big dune going right down the back into the hind dune there. So they're really, really important. Don't forget birds like rainbow lorikeets, black cockatoos. They come in and eat the casuarina seeds, the banksia seeds. So there are great food sources found in here for these guys. Wallabies live there. They'll actually march out to the fore-dune at night. You'll often see their little scat left around, the little droppings of the wallabies out on the fore-dune. They nibble on the goat's foot. So they also find a habitat in these great structures created by the trees here. However, if you keep going, the next stage you come to the road. Okay? So the road is a dangerous fragment in that ecosystem, because that ecosystem continued all the way down to the mangroves. There was another dune there. And so when you've got an increasing population, more cars on the road, the animals have to cross this little dangerous strip, and roadkill starts to become another factor that can diminish them. Okay, so I guess I might wrap it up there, but hopefully guys, just that little snapshot, we start to get this feeling for this community living in a harsh living space that relies on its relationships to survive. Okay, so don't forget that idea, biodiversity. Nobody needs to come in here and put potting mix around and do things like that if we've got all the elements in place, including the spinifex doing its job down the front. Then we've got trees like casuarina that can filter out the salt, protecting the trees behind with their relationships with bacteria. We've got all of the ghost crabs bringing their little bits of nutrients back from the beachfront, dumping them in the dunes via their droppings. Termites doing their bit. So I guess it's just that cliched idea in a way that these ecosystems rely on the community of relationships to allow them to survive. It's only when we interfere. One of the things that does pop up here as you get closer to the road are weeds coming in from people's gardens. And so that might start requiring our intervention to maintain it. And the sand dune system across the road from the resort here is managed by a great group of volunteers called Dune Care. So it's a federally funded system of basically volunteers who come and look after that sand dune area. They plant natives, they pull out weeds, they basically look after it. And so that's that idea that as we start to get involved in the picture, we're introducing animals like cats, we're introducing weeds, and so we really probably need to be more proactive in managing those and allowing the natives to survive there.
Guys, remember with your assessment piece for your IA2, you really are looking at how, like if you look on the criteria, it says talk about biodiversity or the interconnectedness of the ecosystem. So when you're looking at this area here and you're talking about your sand dunes and you're comparing your abiotic factor to your biotic factor, there's a lot of things that influence it there. Pretty much exactly what Brett has gone through today. Miss Evans has been recording these sessions here and they will go up on our OneNote so you can go back and watch it. But this is such fantastic information that you can include in your report, okay?
Rhett also mentioned at the beginning of our sand dunes, he was talking about specs classification, because your task is to do an abiotic and an abiotic examination of the dunes in order to classify an ecosystem. So you're going to need to use specs classification to actually figure out the fore dune is what kind of environment, the main dune is what kind of environment, and the hind dune is what
Which
kind of
we did
environment.
in term 4 of last year, right? So that's term
Yep.
4 of last year.
Term 4 of last year, and we will post up specs tables for you to the OneNote and to my Unity so that
You're
you've
smart,
got
you'll be
access
writing
to
this
that.
down right now. Specs
Okay.
classification is what you
Mhm.
need to do.
Yeah, because if you don't do that, technically you haven't satisfied the criteria to classify an organism.
And that was really the
ASIS
system.
group, that's not you.
And that was really the system that helped us identify the strata, was via its classification of ecotype. Awesome. Okay, guys, well, if there's any questions, feel free to ask me, but thanks so much for your attention after that big session this morning. You did a great job in harsh conditions. You got to feel what it's like to live down there, so you put your body in there, feel the heat of the sand dunes, and hopefully you've come away with a few insights and you'll get some good assignments done. So thank you very much, guys. Appreciate